Hi, I'm Kat, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be showing you the same design 3 different ways with different complexities for your time, your skill set and just basically the person that you're painting. It will be building on the same techniques that I showed you in the video on Tuesday, using the same 2 brushes, a number 3 and number 4 round, a single sponge and also single colour paints. No split cakes, no fancy equipment and no really complex techniques. So keep watching.
Okay, so we're going to start off with this first design, which is for particularly wiggly little people, or if you're really short on time, it's going to be a really simple, basic design. One colour, this is the purple, I think it's Basics Purple from DFX. Spritz bottle on the cake, like I've shown you in the previous video. Spritz on the sponge, as you can see, little miss gets a little bit of a aftermath there. Stroke the paint over the corner of the sponge. So what I'm using here is on the flat side where we cut that sponge in half that I showed in my basics video. I'm going to just load one corner of it. And then you're going to want to start above the eyebrows and just brush the sponge across it and draw a triangle shape for the ears. Because as you've seen from the title, we're doing a cat. And then same on the other side, keeping an eye there to make sure it's as symmetrical as possible. So we're literally just stroking in. She's meowing now. She's actually been a perfect example for this video for this design, because she was proper wiggly and chatty the whole way through. She didn't really want to sit still. So you got my hands blocking it there, but what I'm doing is just brushing up the middle of the forehead there to fill that space, and then down the nose, giving sort of a wispy, furry look at the top of that sort of fringe type bit in the middle, and then just down the little nose. No more than that, because like I say, it's for little people, so you can get away with doing this on little ones that want their face doing. Now this is the metallic purple, the Diamond Effects metallic purple, and the number 4 brush, and just nice creamy paint, just a little bit of damp brush, and swirl it round and get a nice creamy paint, twisting the brush to get that point back so you can start decent line work. There we go, and then we're just going to start on the inner eye of the eyebrow for the ear, and we just stroke up that nice consistent line, no feathery bits, with a little bit of pressing the bristles down at the top of the ear just to give that slightly thicker line, so it tapers in at the eyebrow and then tapers back down again on the outer of the temple for the ear shape. Back into some paint, reloading it. As you can see, she was very wiggly, which is fine because, you know, that's why we do these quick designs. And that's also why I'm doing a voiceover, because she was gabbling away the whole time. Okay, so again, twisting the brush, loading the brush up. And now I'm going to do sort of little thick to thin lines. So what you see on the final picture a bit more. So I started on the barrel of the brush and then lifting it up to taper out, so to get these little flicks, to get these little fluffy bits in the ears. So you want to start on the barrel of the brush, and then as you move the brush away, just lift it up onto the tip, and then you'll get that nice thick to thin line. And then again, we're going to do some sort of like, again my hand's blocking it a little bit there, but do little sort of teardrops, thick to thin, for the tufty fur on the top. It was quite warm in my room, so the paint had to keep reloading, which was not ideal. Right, so for the nose, it's almost like a little heart shape. You just want to do on the barrel of the brush, across the end of the little nose. I mean, she's only got a tiny little nose anyway. And then just join it up in the middle, and then just go down the bridge of the nose. And then the little line down the front of the mouth. Now, this is where I would say that I was trying to do a really simple design, but on both this one and the next one, I ought to have... Oh, I did change on this one. On the next one, I should have changed my brush for the whiskers from the 4 to the 3, and I didn't. So here we go. So I'm on the number 3 brush now, sorry. Loading the brush again. I'm just going to do some little whiskers. Now, these are quite tough. she was quite wiggly there as well, which makes it very difficult to get. And obviously if they talk whilst you're doing it, the whole bit that you're trying to put the whiskers on is moving. So yes, so basically that's just a thick to thin line, a bit longer than you've done at the top. Not the most delicate of line work. I also put some glitter on her afterwards. But that's that little quick design there. Right, on to the second design for a slightly older child. There's going to be a bit more detail on this, and we're going to be using 2 single colours. My little tip here, as you can see, he's got a lot of hair, so I just take my spritz bottle and spritz the hair to be able to move it out of the way. It's not a permanent fix, but it works whilst you're painting. Obviously, as his hair dries, it's going to go back over and cover the design, but by that point, the child's probably over it anyway. Do you know what I mean? So it's not the end of the world, but it's a good way to not have to carry anything extra in your kit, not have to worry about allergies or anything, and just be able to get the hair out of the way. Because little boys don't always want a clip in their hair. I carry clips for little girls, but not for boys. So I've got the I've got Global Grey and Global White, and just spritzing that, and then the sponge, spritzing that with a spritz bottle. And this is how I showed for blending in my tutorial video. So I'm going to load one. Oh, I'm trying to work out where the camera is. There we go. One corner of the sponge with the grey, like that. And one corner of the sponge with the white. Now, it's important to try and load as much as possible to try and get the face done in one go, because otherwise you'll end up with stronger patches of colour around the face if you reload in between. So again, we're going to start by going in with the ears. This time I'm not filling the ear in, I'm going to just draw the triangle shape for the ear with the grey corner of the sponge. And then I'm going to fill that in with the white. I'm using quite a sort of scuffing motion because I'm trying to get a sort of messy blend, because I'm trying to get a furry effect. Again, my hand's blocking. It's very difficult to paint the middle of their faces and not have it blocked. So yeah, so again, I'm using the grey corner to come down the face and the nose and do the furry fringy bit in the middle, and then flipping the sponge over to use the white to make the muzzle, and then blending it a bit more. I'm about to reload now. A little clown that he is there. Right, and then we'll take the grey across the cheeks a bit. So this is where it's a bit more advanced for a slightly older child that's more willing to sit for a little bit longer, because it's not just, when you're face painting, it's not just how long they're willing to sit for the actual painting. You've got to think about the parents afterwards trying to get it off. So the first design, and as it happened, the first design that I did on my daughter, she decided not that much later that she didn't want it on, and it was a lot easier to get it off when it was just down her nose and above her, on her forehead, than if I'd done an all over face like this. She does sit for more, but for the purposes of this video it was useful to just show how you can do it. Right, so I'm on to the number 4 now. Number 4 round brush. And this is DFX Black. Just going to... Sorry, I am all over the place in this video. This is the first time I've done it with this camera. It's a new camera, and I'm trying to find the viewfinder all the time. So there we go. So we've got the DFX Black being loaded on the number 4 brush with a nice creamy consistency. Again, twisting the brush to get that point. He's looking at himself the whole time in the viewfinder as well, which is quite entertaining. So again, we're going to go from the inner eyebrow up. You can see that taper a little bit better there, where it starts off thin, and then I push down on the barrel of the brush to get that arch up over the ears, and then come back down to thin lines. So it's a nice thin to thick line. It just gives a nice swoop, and it's a lot easier when you're painting. Again, those little flicks, so starting a bit more pressure, then easing the pressure off as you're coming to the end of your stroke. And then we're going to do some, where we start, oh yeah, so we're going to go again those little lines off the corners of the mouth, and then what you're going to want to do is follow the white outer edge and do this sort of swirl where you put more of the pressure and then you taper the pressure up past the nose to get this sort of cat muzzle shape. He was quite giggly and wiggly, hence why it's not brilliantly symmetrical. That's something to bear in mind. That's quite a tender bit of the face. Some of the children find that really funny, and they will either try to talk to you whilst you're doing it or laugh. So again, we do those little teardrop flicks at the top for the fur, and then this time, because we've got across the cheeks, we're going to do the same sort of strokes coming down the cheeks. So just these thick to thin lines to give the sort of illusion of hair on either side to give these fluffy cheeks that you've painted on for the cat. Like that. And then the nose is very much the same, so you're sort of doing, just sort of doing a heart sort of shape to start with, and then linking the top bit up. His nose was really wonky. I think it was because he was half trying to look in the camera, and I was kind of staying out of the camera shot, so I apologise for that. It's work in progress, this painting thing. Right, this is where I was saying on the last bit that I should have changed to the number 3 brush. So I would suggest if you do this design, change your brush to the number 3 for the whiskers, because these are far too bulky. And the problem with it is, if there's any sort of movement from your model, it will really show up with these thick, chunky lines, and it will completely ruin the line work. So yeah, I'm not happy with those. I would definitely suggest you change to the number 3 brush. I'm just going to block the entire shot there. Like I say, this is a work in progress. Please bear with me. Okay, this is a number 3 brush. This is my Loew Cornell Gold Grip brush. They don't make those anymore, which is why I was using my face paint shop ones. But for the ease of the speed of the video, I grabbed that one because it was already loaded up with white. So I'm using my number, still a number 3 brush, number 3 round, loaded up with white. And then I'm just going back in over the hairy teardrops to add a little bit more definition and just to give it a little bit more depth. This is a time thing. If you've got big queue or there's a lot of kids to paint, then don't think you have to do this, but this is just still a way of adding a little bit more detail for the kids that are willing to sit for a bit longer, and it just makes the design look a little bit more finished. You see, just so it's a little bit more tapered. I'm just going to put a little flick over the ears just for some sort of little highlight, a little bit more detail. You can see his wonky nose there a little bit easier now. That's what happens when you try and do it from the side and stay out of shot. I'm just doing some little flicks now with the white up from the nose to give sort of a feathery, furry look across the nose. You can do this with black as well. If you end up with a wonky line like I did, if I'd done that in black, that would have completely hidden that wonky line. You wouldn't have seen that he had a wonky nose. So that's a nice little tip. That's a way of correcting what you're doing without having to erase stuff. So I'm taking the number 4 brush again, back into the black. And I'm just going to add a little bit more detail with some dots. This was also in my video from Tuesday. So you want nice creamy paint, really saturate the brush. And I'm using varying pressures to get the different sizes of the dots. And it just gives a little bit of an interest and a little bit more detail to the design. So I'm using a lot of pressure on most of the barrel of the brush for the big dots, and then coming back up onto the tip. And because it's a number 4 rather than number 3, it gives you a good size dot. And then just putting some little whiskery bits in there to try and salvage those whiskers. Like I say, I should have used the number 3 brush. And that's the finished design for the slightly older child. It doesn't take that long, and it's only using 3 colours. Right, this is the more advanced version. I'm going to start with the white, and a sponge. I'm just reusing the sponge that I've just used in the grey video there. Obviously you would use a clean sponge per person, but these are my children and my sponges, so it's not the end of the world. I look very stern in this. I was trying, I don't know why, I just look very stern. I'm not that stern a person really. So you're going to go in with the white and go up over the nose to start with. And bringing the muzzle for this cat face a lot more out over the cheeks. It's a lot wider than I've just done on the little boy. So it's a lot wider trying to keep my mirror out of shot here as well. So yeah, we're just filling in the muzzle area, trying to make sure it's not too patchy, but also what I'm trying to do is keep a soft blend at the edges. This is why I'm using the Global White as opposed to the Diamond FX White. The Diamond FX White is really strong, thick, almost waxy consistency paint, perfect for line work, but the Global White is a little softer, and I tend to keep it for bases and when I do stencil work. I've got another video coming about stencils. So you will see that actually when if I do a kit run through, you'll see that I actually have 2 or 3 different blacks and 2 or 3 different whites for different things. I have whites for backgrounds, whites for line work, and blacks the same. It's the different paints. So I'm just going to reload some white and I'll go back in and just put a little triangle on the outer corner of the eyebrow. And the white was done. Like I say, the room was really hot. The paints were drying out really quick. This is something that you'll get to know when you're painting. Different conditions really make a difference to how fast you paint, because you're having to either reload constantly or the paint's taking ages to dry. That's another thing. So remember, if you're doing any sort of layering in your designs, if it's taking a long time for the paint to dry, that can be a nuisance. I've worked outdoor jobs, however, where it's been the complete opposite. It's brilliant for the face because all the design is drying nice and quick on the face, but the paint is drying super quick in the pots and you're having to constantly reload. So this is something you will get to work to. This is actually Snazaroo pink. I think it's light pink, and then the Diamond FX purple. I think it's the Essentials purple that I used on page in the beginning. So I'm loading the sponge up, the purple on one corner and the pink on the other, and I'm starting with the pink and just going on the inner edge of the eye and around the edge of that white that I put in there for the muzzle, and we're just stroking it out to sort of about the outer corner of the eye, and then tapering it down following the edge of the white muzzle, not going over the edge of the white muzzle. Flipping the sponge over and then putting the purple on the outer corner of the eye, slightly overlapping the pink, and then just fading it out to get this sort of, I don't know what sort of shape you call it, sort of a pouchy, cheeky shape. So you can see, and then I'm just going to again pinch that sponge in the middle and then blend it up. You can see the blending a lot better in this video than in the video that I tried to demonstrate it. I used the wrong colours, I think, in that video. But you can see how that, using the dry outer of the sponge, gives you a much better blend and a nice soft blend. So we've done that. I was also referring to a picture, a reference picture for this, because I wanted it to be significantly different to the other cat designs. Little disclaimer, this is also the first time in a really long time I've painted myself, so I was a bit out of practice. So I'm taking the pink and going across the eyelid and meeting up with that white, sort of just brushing it across to just give it a soft blend. Now obviously I've got full makeup on, so I didn't want to go too over my eye, but you can go over the whole eye. And then using the purple to just go up over the top and draw the remaining sort of edge of that ear there, and then blending it a bit there. I've also then brought the pink up in the middle to give that little tufty furry bit in the middle there. Basically any bit that you get to that you want to blend the colour a bit more, just flip it over to that dry area of sponge, and then just repeating the same on the other side. This is a really good thing to try and do if you are lacking in people to practice on, is to practice on yourself. If you can paint yourself, some of the more complicated designs especially, you can definitely paint it on someone else. It's a lot harder to see the planes of your own face whilst trying to use a mirror. Just putting a little bit of the purple there on the outer edge of the eye. So yeah, definitely a good tip. Also, and a tip if ladies and gents, to be fair, if you want to, if you're going to be practicing on yourself and you're going to be using strong colours, put foundation on first. Because it's a lot easier to remove and it'll be a lot less harsh on your skin. because you think you'll probably be painting yourself more than once. So I'm going in with the, I think it was a number 3. I didn't see, I'll be honest. And then the DFX Black. So we're going to start, this is where the line work's a little bit more complicated than on the other, still the same strokes, but there's more line work. Excuse me while I feel about there. Right, okay, yeah, it's definitely number 3, looking at that. So starting again on a thin line on the outer edge of that purple, and then you're going to go thick, and then you're going to taper it up to a thin line. So it's almost a tiger stroke, that one. My first line was a bit wobbly. So again, thin line, think of it basically as a tiger stripe on the outer edge of the purple, thick line, and then tapering up at the very tip of the ear, so you get this nice point at the tip of the ear. If you have to, see, I fluffed that. I was trying to make it symmetrical, and because my arm's floating, I'm not at a table. I ended up fluffing it. Don't feel that you can't just go back in to make them, to even them up. Another tip that I always forget when I'm painting myself is paint the side that's hardest for you to paint first, and then it's easier to use the side that's your good side to make it symmetrical than the other way around. So I'm then coming along the edge of that purple and just doing this kind of, I don't know, scalloped shape sort of thing, where you do thin line and then bring it down to thick and then back to thin again to give the edge of the ear. Sorry if I'm not very good at describing, I'm not really sure what to call that shape, it's just like a squiggly shape. And then we're going to do some really on the tip of the brush, just these wispy, furry lines. So all I'm doing is almost scribbling with the brush, but staying really on the tip. This is where paint consistency is really important. If your paint is too dry, this will not work. And likewise, if it's too wet, it won't work, because you'll lose all the definition and it will just run. I'm going to try and zoom in a bit here for you to be able to see. Okay, so going to do a similar effect down the cheeks, but with a longer line to start with. So you're doing these long lines, thick to thin, really on the tip of the brush, and then doing the little squiggles in between to give the furriness. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now. This is something I will say, this is one technique that is a heck of a lot easier to do on somebody else. But you get the idea. So you've got this tufty cheek. So it's taking the step forward from the last video, the last tutorial, with the grey cat, where you just do a thick to thin line, a teardrop almost, and it's just getting you to be a bit more brush control, linking it up. Obviously it's hard. This is another point where it's harder on yourself, because to keep it symmetrical. So that's why I came to the bottom by my mouth almost, and where it finished, so I can join it up a lot easier without it going horribly off one side and having a cat with a fat mouth on one side and not on the other. So this is where it was quite hard to actually do on the video. Okay, so I'm going up to the eye, and it's a similar shape to, obviously, on the grey cat. We're going to follow the trace of the muzzle. So, but we're going to do thick to thin and then curve round to give a whiskery shape. Thick to thin, really on the tip of that brush, thick to thin, and then come up really thin to meet at the corner of the mouth. So you've got thicker at the top by the eye, and then you're going to curve out round that white portion, then curve back in with a thick to thin, and then coming up on the taper of the brush. That will take some practice. I offset mine a little bit too much, so I've got this funny little bump. It should be a little bit more smooth, but it still works. You still get the idea, and you can actually cover that a little bit with some white a bit later on. So that's the muzzle. We're going to come back up to the eye, and you're going to trace under the eye and then flick up at the outer corner. This is something that it adds to the look of the cat, because you're giving the human shape eye more of a cat shape eye. But people are funny with you painting around their eyes, so check first if they want this this step. Older people probably would be better, sort of your teenagers and your adults would probably be better with it, but you just have to be a bit careful painting around people's eyes. Some people aren't used to it. If they don't wear a lot of makeup, for example, they're not used to fiddling about around their eyes, and it can make people's eyes water. And then obviously it just ruining the entire design. So do check first. It's a bit different when you're doing it on yourself. It's quite easy to do it on yourself. And then I'm going from the inner corner and then just through the crease of the eye, and then adding that curve and a flick to again give more of a feline eye appearance. And then on the other side. If I was doing this on somebody, I would tell them, they would obviously have their eyes shut, and I would tell them to keep their eyes shut whilst the paint dries, so it doesn't bleed onto the eyelid and then smudge the line. But I don't have that luxury because I'm painting myself at the moment. But there you go. So you've got the cat's eyes done. But again, you could probably do the upper lid, no problem on most people, but the lower lid, it might be worth checking. Sorry, that was my phone. It might be worth checking that people are happy with you going that close to their eyeball. So I'm just going in with some dots. This is the number 4 again, to add some detail. Again, it's also highlights what I said in my tutorial video, that the adding of the dots just fills the dead space and just finishes off designs. So what I've done there to get that slightly bigger splat of a sort of shape is just as I've put the barrel of the brush down, I've given it a little wiggle, and you just get a slightly more irregular shape, which is good for animal print because obviously they're not always perfect circles. And it just gives a nice bit of difference. I didn't see what that was. Oh, I see, that's the number 3. I've gone back to the number 3. I learnt my lesson from the grey. There's the mouth shape is slightly different on this, as we've done the muzzle slightly different. So we still come down that central line underneath the nose, but then we're going to feather out to a slightly wider sort of shape to give it more of a cat shape to the mouth. And then down over the lip. Excuse my sniffing. At a moment there, you can see. Right, so back to the number 3. So remember, this is a number 3 round. It's a Loew Cornell gold grip brush rather than the face painting shop brush, but I don't believe they make them anymore. So do, if you want to find a number 3 round, the face painting shop would be a good start. And I'm loading that in the white again. And I'm just going to put some little dots on the whiskery bits. And as you can see, that sort of hides how bumpety I've made that. I've just made it stick out a little bit too much, but it just sort of hides that a little bit with the white. And again, adds a bit more detail. These are all little finishing-y steps that you can skip if you are short on time. This is more, I would say, this is more of an adult design for more of a party, or teenagers for that matter, or private parties rather than a paper face event. So what I'm doing here is taking on the tip of the brush and then coming down for a swirl. So rather than just doing those little flicks, and then a teardrop, and then a long teardrop, and then a little teardrop in the middle there. So that's just to fill in that space, but give it a bit more variety and make it look a bit different. That was with the number 4 brush. You can fill that space however you want, but I just think that the swirl kind of goes with the design a bit better. And I'm just reloading the number 3 with the white. Oh no, I'm not. I'm doing the number 3. I had rinsed the brush, but the water was quite far away. And that's into the Snazaroo pink that I used for the middle of the face. So going back to my video from before, I have no problem with Snazaroo whatsoever. I do have some colours in my kit. And I'm just going to do the nose. So again, just brush strokes across from the nostril point, and then you fill in the top and get them to meet each other. And come down a little bit to give it a little bit more of a lip over the nostril. Fill that in. Give a little nose. And then back into that pink. And I'm just going to fill the bottom lip in on this design. This is something, again, like I say, that makes it the difference between it being an older child or a teenager and an adult design. I don't tend to fill in the mouths on little children, especially if you're at a birthday party, because they want to eat their food, they drink, and it just smudges out the entire design. Okay, so back into the white, and I just felt like I wanted to put something at the top here, so I've gone into the white and I've just done some little teardrops. Because this was a global paint rather than the Diamond Effects that I normally use for lines, these weren't the best teardrops in the world, but you still kind of get the idea. It just adds a little something. So into my Stargazer iridescent white glitter, I'm tipping that a little bit of that into the lid. And then because it's on myself, I'm using my finger. If you were using this on somebody else, I would suggest a cotton bud would be good if you were putting it on lips, or a clean brush. And then just dabbing on the lip. To be fair, the best option for that probably would be a cotton bud, and then on the nose. Because what you can do for sanitary purposes is you can cut cotton buds in half, so you've got one little half, and then I'm just going to close my eyes and tip it on my cheeks and all over the design. So it's a bit exorcist-like there, sorry about that. There we go, and that's the finished design. So a little bit more to it and just a little bit more detailed. If you did like this video, please, oh yeah, I tipped the glitter on my paint, not a good thing. If you did like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please put your comments in the box below. Thanks for bearing with me.